For nearly 4 decades, Judge Greg Mathis stood for one idea above all others: that a person's worst chapter doesn't have to be their last one. He built an entire career, an entire television empire, on that single message. So when news broke in August 2024 that his wife of 39 years had filed for divorce, it didn't just surprise his fans. It forced a man who'd spent his life preaching redemption to live through a test of his own marriage, in full public view. This is the real story of what happened, told only through what's actually been confirmed, by Mathis himself, by his wife Linda, and by court records. Before there was a courtroom, before there was a television show, before there was a marriage anyone was watching, there was a kid from one of Detroit's roughest housing projects who almost didn't make it to 18. Greg Mathis, full name Gregory Ellis Mathis, was born in Detroit, Michigan, on April 5, 1960. He was raised in Herman Gardens, a public housing project on the city's west side, the youngest of 4 boys raised by his mother, Alice Mathis, a devoted Seventh-day Adventist who worked as a nurse's aide and housekeeper to support her sons. His father was largely absent from his life. Mathis has spoken openly in interviews and speeches about how that absence shaped him. Growing up without a father in a neighborhood hit hard by poverty and crime, he found community in something else: the streets. As a teenager, he became involved with the Arrow Flynns, a Detroit street gang his own father had reportedly been associated with before him. What started as petty trouble escalated. By his teenage years, Mathis has acknowledged in his own retelling of his life, he was dealing drugs and living the kind of existence that ends, for most young men in that position, in prison or worse. It nearly did end that way for him. At 17, he was arrested in Detroit while carrying a concealed handgun. Because of his prior record, prosecutors charged him as an adult rather than processing him through the juvenile system. That single decision changed the entire shape of his life, though not in the direction anyone might have expected at the time. While Mathis was facing this adult charge, several things happened in close succession, and together they became the turning point he has referenced again and again throughout his public life. A judge gave him a stark choice: get a GED or go to jail. Around the same time, at 17, Mathis heard the Reverend Jesse Jackson speak. According to Mathis's own retelling in his memoir, Jackson's words struck something in him, and the two spoke privately afterward. Jackson didn't just offer encouragement. He issued a challenge. Your heart is in the right place, but to win young people's minds and souls, you got to have ammunition, Jackson reportedly told him. A year from now, I want to hear what you've done to improve yourself. We got a deal. Not long after, Mathis learned that his mother was seriously ill, diagnosed with cancer, with limited time left. Mathis has described rushing to her side and making her a promise that he would change, that her sacrifice raising 4 boys alone wouldn't be wasted. He earned his GED in 1977 through Operation Push, a program built for young people the system had largely written off. It was the first concrete step in a transformation that would, over the following 2 decades, take him from juvenile detention to the bench of a courtroom. He went on to Eastern Michigan University, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Public Administration in 1982, and was active in campus activism, helping lead Free South Africa demonstrations and voter registration drives. It was also at Eastern Michigan where he met a fellow student named Linda Reese. They would go on to become, in his own words, college sweethearts. After Eastern Michigan, Mathis continued building the legal career that had once seemed impossible for someone with his record. He attended the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, studying at night while working during the day, and earned his Juris Doctor degree in 1987. Along the way, he also gained real political experience, working as an assistant to Detroit City Councilman Clyde Cleveland starting in 1983, and later managing a neighborhood city hall office for Mayor Coleman Young's administration. In between, he also headed Jesse Jackson's Michigan office during Jackson's 1988 presidential campaign, a direct continuation of the relationship that had helped set his turnaround in motion a decade earlier. When Mathis applied for his law license, his past did not simply disappear because he'd earned a degree. His juvenile record raised serious questions for the state bar. But Mathis pushed back, taking his case to fight for admission, and ultimately won the right to practice law. He was admitted to the Michigan bar in 1992 and began practicing law in Detroit in 1993, building a private practice that focused largely on defending young adults, the same population he himself had once belonged to. On June 1st, 1985, Greg Mathis married Linda Reese. He was 25 years old. It was a relationship that had started in college and would go on to outlast nearly everything else in his public life, his television career, his courtroom tenure, even, eventually, a divorce filing. Together, Greg and Linda Mathis raised 4 children, Jade, Kamara, Greg Mathis Jr., and Amir. Throughout his rise, from city council staffer to mayor's office employee to practicing attorney, Linda was a constant presence, eventually becoming, by his own account, central to managing the family's affairs as his public profile grew. In 1994, Mathis decided to run for a seat on Michigan's 36th District Court, the busiest court in the state, with jurisdiction covering misdemeanor cases, felony preliminary examinations, and civil small claims. He won the election in 1995, becoming, at 35, the youngest judge ever elected to that bench, a remarkable distinction for a man who, less than 2 decades earlier, had been sitting in a juvenile detention cell. His tenure as a sitting judge ran from 1995 to 1998, and during it he developed a reputation for blending no-nonsense rulings with a more personal, rehabilitative approach, frequently drawing on his own background when speaking to defendants, particularly younger ones, and pushing initiatives aimed at helping court-involved young people earn their GEDs rather than simply cycling them through the system. It was a brief tenure by judicial standards, lasting roughly 4 years, but it set up everything that followed. Notably, his work with at-risk youth predated the bench entirely. In 1986, Mathis, along with Linda and several friends, had already founded Young Adults Asserting Themselves, the nonprofit job training organization, and helped establish 4 preschools in Detroit, meaning that by the time he took the bench, the partnership between Greg and Linda's public-facing work and their private family life was already well underway. Long before reality television gave the public a window into his family life, Mathis had already chosen to make his own past part of his public work. In 2002, he published a memoir titled Inner City Miracle, co-written with Blair S. Walker and released by Ballantine Books. The book didn't soften his history. It detailed his time with the Errol Flynns in unsparing terms, his anger at the world around him, the criminal exploits that nearly ended his life before it began, and the slow, difficult climb back from all of it. That same year, a stage play based on his life, titled Been There, Done That, toured 22 cities across the country. The memoir wasn't simply a vanity project. Mathis used his story and the credibility it gave him to build out a network of youth-focused advocacy work that ran parallel to his television career. He served as chairman of the Reverend Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition, became a national board member of the NAACP, and sat on the board of the Morehouse School of Medicine. In Detroit, he opened the Mathis Community Center and founded a nonprofit, Young Adults Asserting Themselves, which provided career counseling, job training, business startup support, and college enrollment assistance to thousands of young people, many of them facing the same kind of circumstances he'd once faced himself. In 1999, Warner Brothers Television launched a new syndicated courtroom program built around Mathis. Judge Mathis premiered and quickly distinguished itself from the wave of court shows that had come before it. What made it different wasn't just the legal rulings. It was Mathis himself, a host who openly drew on his own history of poverty, gang involvement, and incarceration to connect with the people who appeared before him. The show ran for an extraordinary 24 seasons, from 1999 to 2023, airing 5 days a week across the country, and presiding over more than 13,000 small claims cases during its run. It became one of the longest-running courtroom shows in American television history, and Mathis became known as the longest-running black male host in the genre. The show's impact was formally recognized in April 2018, when Judge Mathis won the Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Legal/Courtroom Program, the first time a black jurist had received that particular honor. It added to other recognitions the show had picked up over the years, including an NAACP Image Award in 2004. In May 2022, Mathis was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He later called it, in his own words, his highest professional achievement, though he was also quick to credit something else as the true foundation underneath it. "It was really my family that was the foundation of my success," he said. After coming out of the streets in Detroit, Linda allowed me to work 15 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week. So it's that support that allowed me the success that you see. Linda, for her part, described the partnership in similar terms during the family's later television project. Our love and support runs deep. That's how the Mathis family rolls. By 2022, the Mathis family story had become compelling enough on its own to support a show separate from the courtroom. Mathis Family Matters premiered on E! On June 19, 2022, running for one season of 10 episodes. It followed Greg, Linda, and their 4 adult children as they navigated life, work, relationships, and the unusual experience of being a famous black family processing very normal things, therapy, real estate, sibling dynamics, in front of an audience. The most significant storyline come out of that season centered on the family's eldest child, Greg Mathis Jr. During the show, Greg Jr. made a decision to come out publicly as a gay man, something he had not done outside his immediate family and close friends, despite having told his parents years earlier, during his freshman year of college. Greg Jr. has spoken candidly about why it took so long to make that public. His father's profile in the conservative segment of his fan base weighed on him. Your dad is very well known and out there, a GLAAD representative observed him on camera during the show, and he has a very conservative fan base. Greg Jr. consulted with his longtime boyfriend, Elliot Cooper, about how or whether to bring their relationship into the show at all before deciding to be fully open. Judge Mathis's reaction, as captured both on the show and in interviews afterward, was one of support mixed with a kind of regret. He said he believed his son had already come out since Greg Jr. told the family at 18 and had been living in Washington, D.C., a city Mathis himself described as gay-friendly, for over a decade. Learning that his son had still been hiding part of himself from the wider world affected him. It troubles me to know that all these years I thought he was living his life free of constriction, Mathis said in an interview with GLAAD. Reflecting on the conversation, rather than simply offering private support, Mathis used a moment to push his son towards something more active. When I told him that I wanted to become more public with my sexuality, to kind of help inspire other people and really share my story, he was proud of that, Greg Jr. recounted. But he actually challenged me and said, "You have to be that activist. You have to take that step." Greg Jr. went on to meet with GLAAD's Vice President of Communications and Talent as part of the show, beginning a more public role in LGBTQ+ advocacy. By early 2023, the daytime syndication business had changed dramatically, and Warner Brothers made a decision that affected 2 of its longest-running franchises at once. In February 2023, the studio announced it was ending both Judge Mathis and the People's Court after the current season, citing difficult market conditions in daytime syndication. For Judge Mathis, that meant concluding after 24 seasons. It would have been easy to assume this was a quiet close of Mathis's television career. It wasn't. Within days of the cancellation announcement, Byron Allen's Allen Media Group confirmed it had signed Mathis to host an entirely new courtroom series. Mathis' Court with Judge Mathis was greenlit almost immediately, described by Allen Media Group as having received a firm go, with a target premiere of fall 2023. Byron Allen, the company's founder and CEO, was direct about why. Judge Greg Mathis is an outstanding, charismatic, and iconic television host, he said, adding that the company was confident the new series would succeed for years to come as Mathis joined Allen Media's existing roster of court show hosts. Mathis' Court with Judge Mathis premiered on September 11, 2023, airing on Allen Media's Justice Central Network and in syndication. The show has continued to perform well enough that in May 2025, Allen Media Group renewed it, along with the rest of its courtroom slate, for 2 additional seasons, extending its run to the 2026 to 2027 television season. So the narrative that Mathis's career quietly ended in 2023 simply isn't accurate. What actually happened was a cancellation followed almost immediately by a relaunch, with Mathis continuing to work in the same genre that had defined his public life for over 2 decades. By the mid-2020s, the Mathis name had extended well beyond a single courtroom show. In 2025, Mathis launched The Mathis Verdict, a podcast co-hosted with his son Amir, built around breaking down high-profile celebrity legal cases. Everything from sentencing decisions in major federal trials to civil suits involving musicians and athletes. The format leaned on call-in questions from listeners and regularly featured other family members as well. Greg Jr. has appeared in the studio alongside Amir, and Linda and daughter Jade have both joined episodes to weigh in on cases touching their own areas of interest. The show reflected something that had been true of the Mathis family's public life for years by that point. Very little of it happened separately. The courtroom work, the advocacy, the reality television, and now the podcast all ran to the same family structure, with Linda, Jade, Kamara, Greg Jr., and Amir each showing up in different combinations across different projects. That same closeness is part of what made the events of August 2024 land as hard as they did with the public. The appearance, built up over decades, that this particular family simply didn't break. For most of their public life together, Greg and Linda Mathis had presented as one of the more stable, visibly affectionate couples in their orbit of Black Hollywood. As recently as June 2024, Mathis had shared a photo of the two of them together, smiling at a concert. So when the news broke later that summer, it caught fans by surprise. On August 22nd, 2024, Linda Reese Mathis filed for divorce in Los Angeles Superior Court, citing irreconcilable differences. In the filing, she listed the couple's date of separation as July 17th, 2024, meaning the split had already been underway privately for several weeks before it became public. The filing noted that the couple had no minor children, since all four of their kids were adults by that point, and Linda requested spousal support, while asking that any obligation for her to pay support to Greg be waived. The timing struck many observers as jarring, in part because of how normal things had appeared just weeks earlier, including the couple reportedly being seen together at their granddaughter's 3rd birthday celebration in the days immediately following their private separation date. Mathis addressed the divorce publicly within about a week, speaking to TMZ on August 30th, 2024. He did not frame it as a betrayal story, and he specifically pushed back on rumors of an affair being the cause. Instead, he described the breakdown of the marriage as a consequence of his own absence, the cost, paid late, of a career that had often kept him away from home. "It's the worst days of my life," he said. "Maybe I'll be the example for another man, a cautionary tale. Don't neglect your wife. That's what happens, guys." He returned to that theme again later that year, acknowledging publicly that the suspicion surrounding the marriage wasn't unreasonable given how much time his work had taken him away. "Neglect can create suspicion, certainly," he said. "If you're gone as much as I am, you have every right to suspect." Linda, when she later spoke about her decision to file, described it not primarily as an act of anger, but as one of self-preservation after decades spent prioritizing her husband's career and their family. "I supported him always," she said. "And at that time, I felt I needed to just take care of me. And that's what I felt I was doing at that time." The separation that followed the filing did not last long. By November 2024, roughly 3 months after the filing, and about 3 weeks after the actual date of separation that summer, the couple had begun reconciling and were reportedly spotted together again. Mathis later compared the emotional weight of nearly losing his marriage to the experience that had defined his entire life's turning point decades earlier, the moment he learned his mother was dying while he sat in a juvenile facility. "I'd do anything to get my mother back," he said. "So I did anything to get my wife back."